Hi, it's Robin. Some of my patrons were asking if I'd make a Christmas special this year, and I wasn't sure if I had any good ideas. Try to think of some way of combining everything my channel is about. Commodore 64, gaming, programming, bug fixing, optimizing code, basic type-in listings, my collection of memories and things from the 1980s, and somehow combine all that together with Christmas. Is it possible? Well, yes, with this 38-year-old magazine from December 1986, Commodore User. I've mentioned before that my family moved to Australia at the very end of 1986, and for all of 1987, we lived in Cottesloe, that's just south of Perth, Western Australia, for the whole year, and then went back to Canada again at the end of 87, early 1988. I had owned a Commodore 64 since March 1984. That's 40 years now. But for various reasons, including the power conversion and NTSC PAL and just the hassle of moving, I had to leave my Canadian Commodore 64 back at home. And when I moved to Australia, we did manage to find a used machine there. But while we were still searching, I found this magazine in a store there. So this is the very first non-Canadian, non-American computer magazine I bought. And I had never seen Commodore User before. I didn't know about Zap 64 yet. I thought this looked really neat. In the UK, it was just £1, but you could see they wanted $3.35 Australian for it. It was imported, and I was just blown away by these game-focused magazines coming from the UK. In Canada, except for our own beloved Transactor magazine, basically all the magazines we got were from the US, like Run and Ahoy and Compute. And it seems that in Australia, while they may have had some homegrown magazines, most of what they had was imported from the UK. So let's just take a little look at it. Pretty good cover art. That's the Sacred Armor of Antiriad. Is that how you say that? I think so. Antiriad. Antiriad. I think that's how I said it. Which was actually a very Metroid-like game. It was kind of developed about the same time that Metroid was being developed in Japan, and they had no idea. In fact, this came out before the NES version. It was just the family computer version that came out before Antiriad. Great game. And also Paperboy, first review. This is a great time for the C64. Just in 1 month. ER Kung Fu 2, Trailblazer, Ace of Aces, Bridgehead. So there is a PDF of this available on archive.org, and I'll probably show some shots from that in addition, but I do have the real magazine here, obviously. So just in this 1 month, World Games, ER Kung Fu, Boulder Dash Construction Set, Red Max, Ace of Aces, Glider Rider, Orpheus, Street Surfer, Trailblazer, Galvan, Robobolt. Funny how there's just as many games that we've forgotten about as great ones here. 2-on-2 Assault Machine. I don't know if I even know that one. 180. Superstar Ping Pong. The Bard's Tale. Psychastria. Strike Force Cobra. Movie Monsters. Panther. World Games. Kettle. They Stole a Million. Super Huey 2. BMX Simulator. Bobby Bearing. Capture and Warrior 2. That's all Commodore 64. And then there is a Commodore 16 and Plus 4 section as well, including International Karate. At a letters section. And the tone of the letter section was just so foreign to me. When I was reading like Run magazine, it just seemed, it was mostly stodgy adults writing in about how to use their word processor or whatever. And this was all, kids writing in, kind of complaining, lots of whining or whinging. But also some fun stuff as well. And the editors responded sometimes in kind. It was all pretty surprising. Ad for Alley Cat by Andrew Braybrook, Houston. Draw a Dragon contest. Guess you win Space Harrier. Not a great game, but that's okay. How to improve your Commodore in 3 stages. Multimodem. Okay. Ads. Buzz. mention of Samantha Fox. That did not happen in the North American magazines. ER Kung Fu, and they actually scored the games. Most of the North American magazines, it's not like they didn't review games at all, but they would rarely just give it a score. It was just, you had to read the whole thing to get the opinion. Which has its pros and cons. Paperboy is rated a screen star. That means they liked it. And also just the layout of these magazines was so colorful compared to most of the North American ones. All, color screenshots throughout, and then just even the layout. These ads were a lot of fun. Action Replay Mark II, derived from Super Snapshot. An ad for Fast Hack'em, America's best-selling disk backup system, now available in the UK. It was kind of interesting how American stuff got held in some reverence, like, the Americans are doing this, and look, we've got it in the UK now. Of course, that wasn't universal or anything, but I did notice that as kind of a marketing ploy at times. Ace of Aces. Anyway, we don't have to look through it all, but I just love going through these old magazines. To think that one of these would come out every month, and there would be dozens of new games reviewed. Price lists. Dante's Inferno. That was a pretty cool game. Street Surfer, not so much. Trailblazer. That was amazing at the time. Just the speed of it and the smooth 3D. Terra Cresta. Galvan got a 4. That was disappointing. I think I played that just once. $180. Cheapo of the month. It was just a £2.99 game. More ads. Okay, I hope I haven't lost you. Some of you probably love this, and some of you are like, get on with the point. World Games. I've got into watching real sumo. Pretty great sport. I gotta play this again on the 64. I wonder if that's like the only computerized sumo game. Kettle. Oh, there, the magazine, 38 years old, showing its age slightly here. Okay, so anyway, skip ahead. I could read it. Yeah, there's game strategy section. Game strategies. Trapdoor. This was a fantastic game. It's great art. Huge sprites. Very moody. Play to win. All these different pokes and cheats. How to either game strategy, but a lot of the time it was these different pokes on how to cheat in the game. Adventure game section. Chart chat. Oh, there's the chart. We gotta look at that. Number 1 on the Commodore 64 chart. Druid. Fist 2. What a disappointing game. Could have been so good, but... Go for Gold. Super Cycle. Warhawk Infiltrator. Alley Cat. Leaderboard. Trivial Pursuit. Ninja. By Mastertronic. Dan Dare, Dragon's Lair, Sanction, Asterix. Did I say that wrong last? Somebody complained about how I said that. Something or Other in the Magic Cauldron. 1942, Jack the Nipper, Green Beret, Ghosts and Goblins, Ninja Master, and Speed King. Huh. Pawn shop. Yeah, I want to comment. Oh. Gauntlet. Christmas with the Stars. Rob Hubbard. Dave Collier. Chris Butler. Anita Sinclair. Bob Armour. And Martin Galloway. So again, if you want to read more of this, the PDF is on archive.org. I recommend you check it out. Okay, so finally, it's almost at the end of here. Oh yeah, America's Cup Challenge. I just happened to live, when I mentioned I lived in Cottesloe, what's the beach there, the America's Cup in 1987 was held. Like just down the street, I was 3 blocks from the ocean, and the America's Cup actually happened right outside. Like basically I could walk down my street a few blocks and see the America's Cup going on out there in the ocean. Neat memory. Okay, so here we are. Finally, the Christmas part. Christmas Eve for the Commodore 64. This is a type-in listing for a Christmas-themed game. Okay, by Sandy Munro, also known as Alexander Munro. It's actually just today that I learned that Sandy is like a nickname or diminutive or hypocorism of Alexander. And according to GameBase 64, this Alex, Sandy, coded at least 6 games that were published by magazines in the 1980s, including this one here. Pretty good. And let's read it. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. It's Christmas Eve and Santa's reindeer have gone missing. They sneaked out whilst he was reading Commodore User. So the silly old duffer's got to go out and find them, leaving you to deliver all the presents on his spare battery-operated sleigh. But the presents are located in the maze, and they're guarded by ice demons. Your job is to steer your way through the maze and collect them, whilst zapping the demons. Not having Duracells, the sleigh tends to sink of its own accord, so you need to use its snow thrusters to gain height. You'll get extra lives on completing the 2nd, 4th, and 6th screens, and you get more points for picking up sacks of prezzies further down the screen. By the way, you'll need a joystick and port 2 for this one, and the controls are joystick left, joystick right, move right, joystick down, fire snow bullets, and fire button to fire the snow thrusters. Okay, and here is the listing. Lines 5 through 500 on the first page, lines 505 through 4200 on the second page, and lines 4205 through 9345 on page 3, and I think that's the end of it. Okay, so this would normally be the time that we type in this listing, but it is pretty long, so I actually checked to see if it was already online, and I found one copy of it on CSDB, supposedly cracked, but I didn't actually see any signs of it being cracked or modified. Well, I did see one sign, but the one thing I did notice was line 2000. They mistyped. There's a typo or spelling error on variables, but amazingly, in the copy on CSDB, that's being fixed and variables is spelt correctly. So, good. Maybe that's what that cracker did. Okay, so let's hook up the C64. Okay, here's the program. If you want to compare it to the type-in and let me know if you find any errors. Here we go. 300 snow bullet, 400 collect sack, 500 crash sequence. It's fairly well commented. 600 level end, at least each subroutine and section is. 900 sound effects, 950 print score, etc. 2000 there, variables. You see it's spelled correctly there. Yay! 4000's the title screen. 5000 is the screen, the display. 5200 is the objects. Like those are, I think, the enemies. 5300, the sacks. Sacks, I think, are the bags of prezzies. 9100 character data. So custom characters. 9200 is the sprite data. All those commas represent just a 0. It's a little shortcut that apparently Sandy knew about. And 9300, there's all the music in the game. All right, let's try running it. Okay, it's pausing. I believe it's reading in all the data, sprite, custom characters, and so on. So it takes several seconds. And there we go. Christmas Eve, written by Sandy Munro. The present high score is 5250. Copyright ARM Software, 1986. So we wish you a Merry Christmas. Pretty nice for a typing game to have music, even if it's simple. I'm a bit annoyed by games that have a default high score like that. Like when there's only one score, and I know because I already played this game that that's actually a pretty high score. Like it is a high score. So anyway, maybe we'll do something about that later. Okay, let's give it a play. Okay, so spawn. Whoa, moving sack. Oh, so yeah, this is a tough game. In fact, my first impressions were really poor. And then I actually just got kind of addicted to the game and thought, I think I can beat this. And actually, the challenge was a good thing. So yeah, you pull down to shoot. And you got to collect all those presents there. And you press the button to thrust up. And there's no visual indication. So you actually have to have, well, I don't know about have to, but the sound, hearing those thrusters fire is actually very useful. I guess those are the ice demons. They look like little two-color pawns or something to me, but okay, I'm doing a bit better here on my second life. Oh, fine. As a general strategy, ooh, there he rose a bit more than I expected. As a general strategy, it's good to kind of get your bearings in these areas where there's a vertical gap. Oh, so it is very easy to thrust too much and to go up, and then you just can't do anything about it except crash. But I've always liked games that involve this sort of mechanic, even if this one's more fiddly than most. But oh. Okay, I gotta be able to beat one level, right? If it takes me too many tries, then I'm just going to cut. I don't know right now how long it'll take me to get through a level. So what I'll do is just I'll play until I get one, and then if it takes me way too long, then I'll just cut it out. But you see the levels are randomly generated each time. And that adds some nice variety, but it also means that sometimes the level's far easier than other times, just because of where those passages are mostly, and where the bags end up. Yeah, it's really easy to overdo the upward motion. Oh, that was close. It is nice that left and right don't seem to have any momentum to them at all. I appreciate that. And now notice that you have to actually touch the bags to collect them, but you can get rid of the ice demons from a distance. So you can kind of use that to your advantage by how you choose to go through the level. Like here. Okay. Can I finish? There we go. And now you gotta just exit down into whatever those are. The bottom cave. There, you see I got a bunch of bonus points. And here we are on level 2. And basically, the difference with levels is that there become 2 ice demons per level here. Not per, what do you want to call these? Per floor. Oh. One more. You get extra life after every second level. Well, the other thing that seems to happen is that the amount of gravity goes up each level. So that definitely seems to make it trickier. I don't find level 2 is much more difficult than level 1, but level 3 is the furthest I've gotten, and that is just way trickier. Just even flying in a, well, I say a straight line, but managing to make your way through is tough. Choosing to go this way because it's a little bit more open. Oh, there. See? Good thing I was there. Oh, yeah. Got through level 2 as well. Hey, you guys are getting a good show here. Okay, level 3. Now, this is, I'm almost certainly not even going to make it to that first gap or whatever we call it. I like how the presents move. They have to move away from the ice demons. Oh, there. But yeah, anyway, the sled just seems so much harder to control here on level 3. I'm doing okay, but ooh. Well, I'm doing better. Yeah, note that your ship actually freezes. I think that's a compromise of this being a basic game. Oh, 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 oh. Huh. Tough. Oh, I've never beaten level 3 before. Yes, I beat the high score. Level 4. Now I'm doomed. Oh, that's close. I've never made it to level 4 before. I mean, it doesn't look any different, but except for extra ice demons. Oh. Oh, hey, I got an extra. Oh, well. My extra life didn't go so well. Game over. All right, we wish you a Merry Christmas. Oh. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty. I like, it's got random levels. Reminds me a little bit of Space Taxi. And, yeah, just, it is sluggish because of the basic. Now, if you don't think much of this game, well, you're not alone. On Lemon 64, it has a score of 2 out of 10, and nobody has reviewed it there. And on CSDB, there's only one comment. Back in 2020, Joe said, I was about to say great fun, but it's really not. Thrust gives meaning to gravity. Here you are fighting with your life, getting past the levels, always overcompensating your drive, crashing into the ceiling. No Christmas presents this year, children. Yeah, well, hey, I got to level 4. Yeah, I actually thought it was terrible at first, but like I said, I actually got addicted to the challenge of it, and it is playable. It is doable. You just have to kind of rise to it if you care. And for whatever reason, I was in the right mood to play a game like this. Well, and the fact that it's in that magazine that I'm nostalgic about. That didn't hurt either. When I was first playing this game, I wasn't thinking this, but it occurred to me, hey, maybe this game can be optimized a bit. So just looking through the listing, it's pretty easy to identify the main loop because line 100 says main loop. Just like we did with Manbiki Shonen, that pet game from Japan that was, I thought, a really good game, but just sluggish just because of the programming techniques used in the 70s and even into the 80s. People just didn't know every trick to get the most out of a Commodore 64 or any of the basics for that matter. You can optimize endlessly, but the best thing to do is just to find the main loop of the game and just focus on that, because that is where the code is spending the vast majority of its time. In that it's called the main loop for a reason. This is the central repetitive bit of code that makes the game work. So if we take a look at it here, you see line 105 is peaking 56320. That's an address, an input-output chip that allows us to read joystick port 2. And when it ends it with 16, that is bit 4, which is the fire button. So this is just checking, is the fire button pressed? That bit goes 0 if it's pressed. Then poke S plus 18. Well, that is defined to 54272, which is the SID address. And it's poking it to 129. That is gating or turning on a sound effect. So whenever you hold down fire, the noise waveform that's already been pre-configured in another part of the game. We're not going to look at every bit of code. That would take hours. But basically, it turns on a sound effect that's already all configured. So it just takes a single poke to get it running. And it also decrements this U. That is the vertical velocity. I don't know why they didn't use V. Well, actually, I do know because they already use V down here for the video chip. So U is the vertical velocity. So basically, when you hold down the button, it thrusts. You hear the thrusting sound effect, and the vertical velocity is decreased a bit. And if you keep holding it down, it will go from positive, which means moving downward, to negative, which means moving upward. Okay, so it's that simple. Line 110 again peaks 56320 for the joystick port. And if it's not equal to 0, then it turns off the sound effect. That's all it has to do there. Next, peak 56320 and 4, that's bit 2. Well, that's joystick. If your joystick is pushed left, then bit 2 will be 0. And then poking 2040 changed the sprite definition to 255, which must be the sled facing left, and it decrements the sprite's X position by 3. So there's no velocity for the X. It's just immediately moves it. It's like a direct linear movement. Line 120 again, but checking for bit 3. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. So that's bit 3, and that's joystick right. If that is 0, then it pokes 2040 with 254, which is the sprite facing the sled facing right, and then moves the X position 3. Then it pokes the X and Y values of the sled into V. That's 53248 or D000 hex, which is the video chip, and the first 2 registers in the VIC video are the sprite X and Y for the first sprite 0. So that just positions the sprite, and it checks for Y being greater than or equal to 203. Well, Y starts at, 0 at the very top, but 50 is just below the top border, and 249, 250 is the bottom border. So 203 is about 80% of the way down the screen. So what this is doing is just checking, has the sled gotten all the way down to the bottom area of the screen? If so, that means that you are done the level, and it goes to 600, and we'll be looking at that more later. But basically that's checking for the end of the level. Then it's going to check one more time, 56320 joystick port 2. It checks and 2, that's bit 1. That is joystick down, and if that's held down, it goes to 305, which is the routine to fire the snow bullet or whatever they called it. Okay, and line 150 here, V plus 31 is the register that tracks sprite to background collisions. And basically, this is just checking C and 1. It's just checking if the sled has crashed into anything in the background, and if so, you've crashed, and that does the crash animation. And V plus 30 is the sprite to sprite collision register. If sprite 0 is involved in a crash, then it has picked up a present, and it goes and figures out which present that is and deals with that. Then what it does is adds E. I don't know why they used E, but that's like gravity, basically. Your vertical velocity, which you changed up here if you thrusted with U, it's going to just add E. So that's just a constant gravity affecting the Y velocity here. And it checks. If U is greater than 1, then it caps U at 1. And if U is less than -1, then U is capped at -1. So you have like a min-max here where your Y velocity can't go greater or less than plus or minus 1. Those are the maximums, just to keep it, I guess, so terminal velocity isn't huge or you can't shoot up super fast. And then finally, the sprite's Y position is adjusted by whatever the Y velocity is. Go to 105, and we loop back up here. So that's why it's called the main loop. Of course, sometimes, depending on what happens, it will go sub other places and so on, or even go to other places. But primarily, the game is always in here. So whatever savings we can make here are going to speed up all that kind of best case scenario. And we'll have to worry about making like the bullet move faster or the level generation, whatever. I mean, you could go ahead if you want to, but you're going to get the best bang for your buck by improving this. So I see 2 major inefficiencies here, and both of them will be pretty easy to clean up. Here we're doing a peak of 56320, and the problem is Commodore Basic, every time it encounters this constant number, it's just an ASCII string in this interpreted language, And 56320 has to get turned from this ASCII value of 5 digits into a numeric value that then can be peaked and processed. So that is parsed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times every time through the loop. So the other thing is that we're peaking this address over and over again. Not only are we figuring out the address, but then we're getting the value and then doing a calculation on it. And while in a way, yeah, you're getting the most up-to-date value, but it's totally okay for game logic, or it should be, to once per loop read your input, save that value, and then just reuse that, put it in a variable, and then just at the top of your loop, read your inputs and save them, and everything can use them. Because, I mean, otherwise you could have it in one frame. If you're rapidly hitting the fire button, this could be true, and then this could be true as well, or, not 0. That is, it could be 0 and not 0 in one loop. And that could actually break game logic depending on what you're doing. You're turning on the sound effect and off. I mean, in this case, it probably doesn't really matter, but certainly you could have bad effects if you're allowing that sort of thing. So that's the main thing to fix. But we can do one other thing I've talked about before. If we take a look at how often variables are used, we can define them in the order of use. So we can make sure that all the variables used in this main loop are defined first, and even in the order of priority. So for example, if we're going to read this peak into a variable called, say, j, we're going to use that 5 or 6 times. So that would be, a very good candidate to put near the beginning of your definitions. Another one that's used a lot is this u. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's used 5 times every time through the loop. And if either of these are true, then it's accessed one more time. There's 5, 6 uses of it. Oh, and up here's another one if you're holding down the fire button. So when you're evaluating this, there is that Faster64 program I did a video about that will do this for you. But if you're just doing it manually, it's best to count separately the times that are always used and the sometimes uses, and that will help you decide what order to put them in. Another one is that y is used more than x. So here, y is accessed once, twice, and down here, 3 and 4. While x is just used once here, not all down here, and it's used if you're moving left or right, then one more use for one of those directions. So 1 or 2 times. Okay, so let's kind of do this all at once. As for where to do these variable definitions, well, this starts the game and it goes to 9,000. That's a routine that pokes. I might as well look at it. Basically, it pokes all the data in, but it does a check first to see if certain values are in certain locations. And if so, it just skips that great big data initialization to save time on repeat runs. That's a clever idea there. Okay, and that sets where the end of basic memory is and then does a clear. Okay, and then after all that, it just goes back to the beginning of the program again. Back to line 10. Okay, so this is actually a really good place. Back at line 10, it goes to line 2500 here. Okay, and this is where we can define those variables, because that's what's happening here. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to renumber 2500 to 2502. We do want to define these V and S, but we want to control the order of it. So I'm just actually going to erase both of those. You know what? I don't like how that high score is set to 5250, even though I did beat it. So you know what? I'm just going to get rid of that too. Okay, and we'll leave the rest of that program as is. And I'm going to replace line 2500 with my own definitions. So I'm going to do a clear, just because that data initialization routine at 9000 did use some variables I and J and so on. I saw them use. So we're just going to do a clear. This is fine. We're at the beginning of the program and we don't need any of those old variables. They were just temporary. Okay, now we're going to define all the variables in the order of use with the most frequent ones at the beginning. And I don't think I mentioned this time, the reason for that is every time Commodore Basic accesses a variable, it goes through all the variables that already exist to see if you already have it. It does that linearly to see if it's already been defined. And if it has, the closer it is to being in the list, the quicker it'll find it. And it can make quite a difference. Okay, so we're just going to define them all. U, J, V, Y, C, D, X, S, E. Now, if you knew you could just dimension variables like that, usually that's used for making arrays, but you can just do these regular kind of scalar variables like this too, and it will reserve space for them. And now I want to define J2. That's the joystick port, just to speed that up so we don't have to parse it. And I'm going to define SP for the sprite pointer 2040 to speed that up a little bit more. And then I'm going to define those video chip 53248 and SID chip 54272 that were here. I'm just moving the order of them. Okay, and these will just be defined as 0, and that's totally fine. And you'll note that V and S, I did define here as 0, and then I went in and gave them their specific definition after for V and S, because you can't do that in line in a dim statement. That's just a limitation of it. Okay, to look at that main loop again, now we're ready to make our edits. Line 105, J equals peak, so we're just going to put that in this joystick variable. J2, that's the 56320, so it doesn't have to parse that. And then we can go if J and 16 and leave the rest of the line alone. Okay, now each of these we can shorten up very nicely. If J and 16, and that will process much faster than before. And actually, just a tiny little thing here, J and 16 is a bitwise AND. It's either going to return 0 or 16. So rather than checking for not equal to 0, even though that's the intention, we can just check for greater than 0, which will be parsed a tiny bit quicker because it's only one character instead of two. That's a super minor optimization, but just to get you thinking about those kind of things. Okay, line 115, we're going to do J and 4. And then where it says 2040, that's the sprite pointer, we're going to change that to the SP definition. Okay, and yes, two-letter variable names like SP and J2 do take slightly longer to parse, but a lot of variable names are already being used, and it's just seemed cleaner to me to just use these ones that I knew that were safe. Or I sure hope they are. By the way, if I've messed up anything in this, there will be a D64 available, and I will have a fixed version for you to play. If I've made aware that I made any mistakes during this. When you do this kind of basic hacking, it's actually really easy to make things worse or to introduce new bugs. It's kind of funny. Okay, and here we go. If J and 8, then again, poke SP. Okay, line 125 is fine. If J and 8, yeah, variable J is used elsewhere in the code, but as far as I know, it's just used temporarily, and then control comes back to this main loop where it's reinitialized at 105. So I believe that's fine. Anyway, the game seems to work fine. Again, if there's any bugs, I will fix them and pin a note about what I did. Okay, so I think that is everything we'll do. This seems kind of redundant here that you're peeking and just using it for one variable, but I think one or two of these actually use that C or D variable. So yeah, I won't touch that. And I think all the rest of it's fine there. Okay, let's see if... Oh! Okay, I messed up. That clear should not be here, because if you do that, it actually forgets the go sub that brought us here. So what I should actually do is on line 10, do the clear here. Okay, so there, all variables are clear. Go sub 2500 can now return safely. Actually, I was just doing that on the fly. I didn't test that. I tested most of this ahead of time. I did not test that. Let's run it. Okay, here's the game. Let's see. Okay, right away. In a way, it makes the game trickier, I think. But basically, the game seems to move faster, especially horizontally there. I think what happens is that now with the game loop running faster, when you hold down fire, it takes less time to give a big upward thrust. That's more touchy, so almost that, maybe that should be tweaked a bit there. Oh! So yeah, it actually makes the game a bit tougher. I think it's because you do more upward thrust is applied in the same amount of time. So it just means it's a bit touchy. It doesn't mean it's like really wrong. That's tough. Okay, so if it's running maybe 30% faster, I'm actually going to... Okay, just on a hunch, I'm going to change that to 0.1, just so you're not thrusting quite as fast. Oh, I flew into... I'm not thinking straight here. Yeah, I already think that feels better. Oh. Anyway, if you don't agree with how I've changed that, you can totally do that. There, I got through the level. I think it's definitely faster. But tweaking the values to be exactly right might take a while. Oh. Game over. Okay, so I think that is more playable now. If you like the original, maybe you don't like any of this, so... I think it's pretty good for a basic game. It made some interesting kind of, I would call them compromises. To keep it playable for a basic game. Really, the rule seems to be that a Commodore 64 basic game can move one sprite at a reasonable speed. But if you try to move more sprites, and that's when it really shows. And that's really when you gotta switch to, that's really when you gotta switch to machine language. Or I guess at least a compiler. Basic compiler. Oh. Okay, but I want to show you something. While I was playing this, I discovered this has a bug. This is going on too long, isn't it? Okay. Merry Christmas. Okay, so you notice I didn't pick up some of the presents or the sacks or whatever. Okay, look what happens here. I haven't picked them all up. I'm going to try and exit the level. Okay, so you see I didn't finish the level. That might be what you expect. Like, oh, you got to go pick them up, right? Can't exit the level. The level doesn't finish. Okay, but look. I hold down fire button to thrust. You can hear it. But I am stuck there. You get stuck. So this is a bug, I guess. Nobody's ever noticed this before. That's not the only bug. Once that happens, you don't die from collisions, and you can go too far and get, look at this, illegal quantity error. and that's because it's trying to poke a value bigger than 255 into the X register. And it happens if you go left as well. Okay, so there's a bug here. Let's try and fix this, right? 38-year-old bug fix. This is part of Christmas. Okay, and I did look through a bunch of old issues of Commodore User, like the next 4 issues into 1987, 3 or 4 issues, because magazines often do publish errata when there is a problem in one of these type-in games. But I did not see anything. In fact, I didn't see errata for any of their type-ins, which I find odd. Maybe I'm missing it, but anyway, if you guys find anything, I'd love to see that. Let me know. But let's try and fix it. Okay, so if we look at that main loop again, and I did compare it with the listing. This bug does exist in my non-fixed version 2, by the way. And it wasn't a typing error because it's the same in the magazine. Okay, this is what I was talking about. After it pokes the X and the Y, it checks is Y greater than 203, and if so, goes to 600. And that is the level complete routine. Okay, so if we list 600, okay, you can see right there, level end. But what it does is it checks if CS, I want to say like collected sacks, or I don't know what it is, something sprites, is greater than 1, then Y equals 203, and then it goes back to 100, which is our main game loop. So there's something going on here. CS, you might think it's tracking the number of sacks left, but really what it's doing is it's storing the bit values for all the sprites. The sled is sprite 0, the bullet is sprite 1, and then the remaining 6 sprites are the 6 sacks. Sprite 2 has a decimal value of 4, and then the next sack is 8, 16, and so on up to 128. So basically, it's just tracking the sprite enable bits for each of the sacks and, of course, for the sled. If anything besides the sled exists, then the level cannot be complete because there must be at least one sack bag still on the screen. The logic here is that, no, you can't go lower, so we're going to fix you at a Y of 203 if you haven't collected all the bags. Okay, 203, and then goes back to line 100. But if you follow the logic here, that's on line 125. If Y is greater than or equal to 203, it goes to 600. That sets Y to 203 and sends you back to line 100 or 105. Well, Y, you can thrust all you want here on line 105, but Y is never updated because Y is down here at 165. So your Y is going to just be stuck at 203 forever because of this bug. Okay, so I think the solution, we could reorder all this logic. I think it's way easier just to go to the routine at 600, 605. If CS is greater than 1, then Y equals, just set it to 202, so it's above. Okay, and that should fix the bug so that I don't have to negotiate through the whole level there. This is the normal Y starting, the X and Y starting position. Change Y from 50 to 194. So we're starting down. This is just so we can test it. We will spawn at the bottom of the level. Okay, that was easier, wasn't it? Now we go down, and now you see he kind of bounces around. And now you can thrust out, although it's very easy to thrust right out. There he goes. Okay, and you can, complete the level or smash into an ice demon, as I just did there. Okay, so that is a bug fix, but I'm not totally happy with how it bounces and how it's kind of ugly to get out of there. It's kind of touchy. So we can do one other thing. So let's see that 605 again. In addition to saying Y to 202, let's set the Y velocity to negative 0.4, which will just give it a little upward thrust and make it look, I think, like it's bouncing. Let's see if that works. Oh, I'm beeping. Okay, here we go. And boing. Isn't that nice? There now has a nice little bounce that's just about the right amount. I think it just makes it easier that you don't just crash. Just gives it a better feel. Ooh. Oh. Yeah, gravity should almost be cranked up a little bit more here too. It's kind of frustrating how you just keep going up. That's kind of the nature of these games too. Ooh. And now you can go through and start collecting all those sacks and then finish the game properly. Am I making you watch all this? Oh, get out. Oh, I got one more guy. Oh, get out. Okay, and now I can set that back to 50. Okay, I think we have a bug fix game. And optimized. Oh, no. I'm playing this so you don't have to. Okay, let's see if we can bounce out of there. Fall down. Yep. Oh, come on. Oh. There. And now we can. Yay! See? It works. I proved it. Okay. Wow. That's way too long. I like that little game over effect too. That's pretty cool. Okay, so thanks to Sandy Munro for making this game a long time ago. Thanks to Commodore User magazine for publishing it. Thanks to David Youd for giving me a nudge towards this very special Christmas episode. Thanks to my patrons for their support. And thank you for watching. Wishing all of you a very Commodore 64 Christmas, and we'll talk to you next time.
It was December 1982. I hoped that my dream would come true, that there would be waiting for me a Commodore computer under the tree. I want a Commodore 64 Christmas. Lego's nice, Lego's fine, but it won't scratch this 8-bit itch of mine. It was December 1983. What would Santa bring for me? Would I finally get my wish? My very own computer with a SID chip. I want a Commodore 64 Christmas. I wanted and I got a Commodore 64 Christmas. Jolly old St. Nicholas, lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul what I'm going to say. Christmas Eve is coming soon, now you dear old man. Whisper what you'll bring to me, tell me if you can. When the clock is striking 12, when I'm fast asleep, down the chimney broad and black, with your pack you'll creep. I do love the computer that I got last year, but now would like some upgrades, please, won't you, Santa dear? I would like my own disk drive, cause that's too slow to load, and a big pack of blank disks on which to save my code. Also get me a disk notcher to use the backside. Yes, I know I could use scissors, but this is quicker and looks much more nice.